It was a cold January afternoon in Baltimore, 1999. The school day had ended, and a bright, talented young woman got into her car, ready to pick up her cousin before heading to work. But somewhere between the classroom and her evening shift, she vanished. Hours later, she never arrived home. Days turned into weeks, and the community's worry grew into fear. Whispers began to spread about love, jealousy, and secrets that no one wanted to believe. When the truth finally surfaced, it would ignite one of the most controversial and debated cases in modern American true crime. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Hae Min Lee was born on October 15, 1980, in South Korea. Her childhood was shaped by her mother, John Kim, who raised Hae Min and her younger brother with determination and care. In 1992, when Hae Min was just 11 years old, the family made a life-changing decision. They left South Korea and moved to the United States, settling in Maryland, where they stayed with her grandparents. From the beginning, Hae Min stood out. She was gifted both in academics and in sports. At school, she joined an advanced program for high-achieving students near Baltimore, excelling not only in the classroom but also on the field. She became a talented athlete, playing lacrosse and hockey with skill and passion. By the time she reached her teenage years, she had built a reputation as a bright, mature, and independent young woman. At 17, she also worked part-time at an optician's office, balancing school, sports, and responsibilities with impressive discipline. In April of 1998, Hae Min began dating a classmate, Adnan Syed. He had been born in the United States to conservative Pakistani Muslim parents. While his family's traditions forbade dating, alcohol, or drugs, Adnan often broke those rules in secret. On the surface, he seemed like the model American teenager, well-liked, a football player, part of the track team, and even trained as an emergency medical technician. He had been elected prom prince, and his peers described him as charming and easy to get along with. Their relationship unfolded like many high school romances: sweet gestures, emotional highs, and disagreements that sometimes led to breakups and reconciliations. Hae Min often wrote about Adnan in her diary, describing him as sweet and caring, recalling moments like when he surprised her with a rose during class. But religion soon became a heavy shadow over their bond. Adnan confessed that loving her felt like a sin within his faith. That conflict became painfully clear on Halloween night, when his parents discovered their relationship and reacted publicly, causing Hae Min to end things the following day. Yet, within weeks, the two found their way back to each other. By November, they were dating again, and Hae Min admitted in her diary that she still loved him. Adnan would visit her at the optician's office where she worked, but by December, Hae Min's attention began to shift. She developed feelings for Don Clindens, a 22-year-old co-worker. Don's mother managed the optical shop, and Don himself was supportive, kind, and mature. He admired Hyman's confidence, and she felt drawn to him in ways she had never fully experienced before. In her writings, Hyman admitted feeling torn between the two men. Adnan knew about her doubts, and the weight of cultural and religious differences only added to her inner struggle. Hyman wanted a relationship where she could be herself, openly involved with her partner's family, without secrecy or shame. She had never told her own relatives about Adnan, and over time she felt that she was losing part of who she was. By mid-December, she finally ended the relationship with Adnan. Soon after, she began dating Dawn, who offered the stability and openness she longed for. With her senior year ahead of her, a promising romance, and outstanding academic achievements, Hyman appeared to be heading toward a future filled with hope. But only weeks later, everything would change. On January 13th, 1999, Haymin was seen leaving school around 2:15 p.m. She got into her car, planning to pick up her younger cousin from daycare by 3:15 before heading to her shift at work. It was a routine day, one of countless others, but this time she never made it. She vanished without a trace. For a girl as responsible as Hai Min, disappearing like this was unthinkable. Her family quickly realized something was wrong and contacted the police. That evening, around 6:30, investigators reached out to Adnan, who explained that the last time he had seen her was earlier at school. They also questioned Don, who stated that he had been at work from 9 in the morning until 6 that evening and hadn't seen her at all that day. The authorities expressed deep concern. Hai Min had no history of family conflict, no reason to run away, and no signs of trouble in her life. Her sudden disappearance was more than alarming. It was the beginning of a mystery that would shake her community and haunt everyone who knew her. In the days and weeks that followed, the absence of any sign from Hai Min plunged her mother into unbearable anguish. Each day without answers made the silence heavier. Then, almost 4 weeks after her disappearance, on February 9th, a shocking call came into the police. A local resident reported finding what appeared to be a human foot, partially buried in a shallow grave. Authorities rushed to the scene. In the vast forest park where the discovery had been made, officers uncovered a body. The place already carried a grim reputation, for this was not the first time someone had been buried there. Soon, investigators confirmed what Hai Min's family had feared the most. It was her. She was just 18 years old. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was manual strangulation, a detail that made the crime even more devastating. News of her death spread quickly, and the community came together in grief, holding vigils and paying tribute to a young woman whose life had ended far too soon. Police first looked into the man who had found the body. He explained that he had pulled over after drinking a beer while driving, stepped into the woods to relieve himself, and then stumbled upon the horrifying scene. His story was checked, but nothing suspicious surfaced. Investigators then turned their attention to Don, Hai Min's new boyfriend. His work records placed him at his job from morning until evening that day. Once again, no suspicious evidence was found. Just as the investigation seemed to stall, an anonymous phone call changed everything. On the other end of the line, the caller gave police a name: Adnan. The tipster suggested he was responsible and even claimed that he had threatened Hai Min's life before. Detectives began carefully reconstructing the couple's relationship. Friends painted a complicated picture. Some said Adnan sometimes felt Hai Min didn't love him enough, while others recalled that Hai Min found him controlling and disliked being told what to do. Her independent nature clashed with his expectations. Stephanie, a close friend, revealed that Adnan had not expected Hai Min to leave him for someone else. In her diary, Hai Min herself admitted that the breakup had been difficult for him to accept. She wrote that she loved him, so how could her feelings have changed so suddenly? It was a question many teenagers might ask. Yet others noticed a darker side. One of her friends described him as jealous and paranoid by early December, often asking if she was being unfaithful. Then came a discovery that deeply troubled investigators. Among Hai Min's belongings, they found a note in which Adnan threatened to kill her. It matched what the anonymous caller had described. Still, there were contradictions. Around the holidays, Adnan and Hai Min had exchanged Christmas gifts and even helped each other when their cars broke down, gestures that suggested they were still on good terms. To detectives, this raised the possibility that Adnan believed they would eventually get back together, just as they had before. But by New Year's Day, Hai Min was moving forward. She had gone on her first official date with Don. For Adnan, the reality of that new relationship may not have been clear until January 5th. That was when detectives believed he first learned of Don. To understand more, they pulled his phone records and examined who he had spoken to that day. One name stood out: Jennifer. At first, her account seemed unremarkable, but the next day, she returned to the station with a lawyer, and her story changed dramatically. Jennifer claimed that Adnan had spent time with his friend Jay on the day of the disappearance. And she went further, stating that Jay had confided in her, saying Adnan had killed Hai Min. This revelation gave the police a new lead. They brought Jay in for questioning. During interviews, Jay said that Adnan had indeed spoken about killing Hai Min, especially after learning about Don. He described Adnan as someone unaccustomed to losing, and while he initially hadn't taken the word seriously, detectives believed they revealed a dangerous mindset. The pressure on Adnan grew even stronger when they learned of a detail that may have fueled his anger. On January 9th, just days before her death, Hai Min had updated her social media profile, openly declaring Don as the new love of her life. On January 12th, just one day before the crime, Adnan obtained a brand new cell phone. The contract was not even in his own name, but in the name of a friend from the mosque. That night, he called several people, supposedly to share his new number. Among those calls were multiple attempts to reach Hai Min. For investigators, this detail became one more piece in a growing puzzle. By February 28, 1999, 6 weeks after Hai Min's disappearance, police moved in and arrested Adnan. At the press briefing that followed, they not only laid out the relationship he had with Hai Min, but also suggested that his motive could have been rooted in an overwhelming fatal attraction. The arrest sent shockwaves through Baltimore's Muslim community. Many who knew Adnan insisted it was impossible. To them, he had always been a kind and respectful young man, deeply committed to his faith, with no ties to violence or crime. Some believed the police, under immense pressure to solve the case, had targeted the wrong person. Hai Min's family, however, felt no such doubt. Her mother, devastated by the loss, wanted justice, and she believed only a harsh sentence for Adnan would deliver it. Adnan, for his part, held firmly to his innocence. He explained that on the afternoon Hai Min disappeared, he had been at the library with a girl named Asia McLean. He insisted he never would have harmed Hai Min, claiming he still loved and respected her. When detectives pressed him about the phone calls the night before, Adnan argued that it had been Hai Min who called him, asking for reconciliation. But investigators found that explanation hard to believe. Hai Min couldn't have known his new number so soon. She only wrote it in her diary after that call, and her final diary entry, written after spending the entire day with Don, declared how much she loved her new boyfriend. To detectives, the idea of reconciliation seemed highly unlikely. Eventually, Adnan was formally charged with first-degree murder. Things became even more complicated when, in March, Jay was brought in for another round of questioning. This time, his testimony went further than before. Jay claimed that Adnan had confessed to the killing and that he himself had helped bury Hai Min's body. According to Jay, Adnan called him after the crime and later picked him up, showing him Hai Min's body in the trunk of his car. In a dramatic turn, Jay then led police to a crucial piece of evidence, the location of Hai Min's car, which until then had been missing. This revelation gave the case a new level of credibility in the eyes of prosecutors. When the trial began in early 2000, the prosecution leaned heavily on two elements: the cell phone tower records, which placed Adnan's phone near the forest park that night, and Jay's testimony. Yet Jay's story was not perfectly consistent. While the core details remained the same, he shifted timelines, changing the hour when Adnan supposedly called him and the moment he claimed to have seen Hai Min's body. The defense seized on these inconsistencies, arguing that Jay's account was unreliable. Beyond that, there was no direct physical evidence linking Adnan to the crime. His fingerprints and DNA were not found in Hai Min's car. Asia McClain was willing to testify as an alibi witness, but for reasons that remain unclear, the defense never called her to the stand. After 6 weeks of testimony, on February 26, 2000, the verdict was announced. Adnan was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, with more than 30 years added on top. Just a month later, Jay pleaded guilty to being an accessory and was given 2 years of probation. The following year, Adnan's defense filed an appeal, arguing among other points that the failure to call Asia as a witness had severely weakened his case. But the appeal was denied, and the conviction stood firm. As the years passed, Hai Min's case refused to fade away. It drew international attention, and soon independent journalists and private investigators began re-examining the evidence. Their work gave rise to new theories, each suggesting that perhaps Adnan had not been the true killer. But if not him, then who? One of the most discussed possibilities pointed directly at Jay. Some argued that he had killed Hai Min himself and then framed Adnan to deflect suspicion. The reasoning varied. According to one version, Hai Min had threatened to report him to police for selling drugs. Another claimed she had caught him cheating on Stephanie. Either scenario, supporters of this theory argued, could have given Jay a reason to silence her permanently. Yet the theory had serious flaws. There was no solid evidence against him, and Hai Min never wrote anything in her diary suggesting such a discovery. In fact, Hai Min was not close to Jay at all, making it unlikely she would have been alone with him in a setting that allowed for such a crime. Another variation suggested that Jay and Jennifer might have acted together, eliminating Hai Min and framing Adnan. This theory speculated that Jay and Jennifer had been romantically involved, and Hai Min had uncovered their secret. But again, the same issues remained. Neither of them had a close connection to Hai Min, and there was no clear way they could have lured her into a meeting alone. Worse still, no physical evidence supported such a claim. Attention then shifted to Don, Hai Min's boyfriend at the time of her death. His alibi, which initially seemed solid, began to draw questions. The confirmation of his work schedule had come from his own mother, who managed the optical shop. Later, some noted that the log sheet carried an employee number that did not match his. Adding to suspicions, police were unable to reach Don until 1 in the morning after Hai Min's disappearance. He had told investigators he returned home around 7 that evening, but he never followed up with them as promised. Another name floated into speculation: the man who had found Hai Min's body. While his story was consistent, he had pulled off the road after drinking a beer and stumbled upon the shallow grave. Later reports revealed he had a criminal record, but his past was tied to compulsive exhibitionism, not violence. He underwent 2 polygraph tests, failing the first and passing the second. Experts warned that nervousness could easily explain those results, and more importantly, there was no logical reason for the killer to lead police directly to the victim's remains. Without a clear motive, this theory quickly weakened. Meanwhile, online forums and true crime communities added fuel to speculation. Users compared Hai Min's case to other unsolved murders in the same period, floating ideas about a potential serial offender. But investigators dismissed these claims after finding no evidence that linked those cases to Hai Min's death. In the end, despite all the speculation, detectives and prosecutors returned to the same conclusion: Adnan. He was the one with motive, means, and opportunity. Years later, the legal battle reignited. In 2012, Adnan once again fought to overturn his conviction. The following year, however, his appeal was denied. But in 2015, the Court of Special Appeals of Maryland granted a pause in proceedings, and the case was sent back to circuit court for review. The question this time was crucial: should Asia McClain's testimony finally be considered? By November of that same year, the higher court agreed to reopen the case. Throughout the long legal process, one factor proved decisive: the independent journalistic investigations. Reporters and private researchers highlighted inconsistencies in the case and questioned the reliability of the evidence that had once secured a conviction. Central to this re-examination was the testimony of Asia McClain, along with doubts about the cell phone tower location data presented at the original trial. According to the defense, those records, especially incoming calls, were confusing and should never have been used to persuade a jury. In November 2015, a judge agreed to reopen the case in the interest of justice. From February 3rd to 9th, 2016, a new hearing drew national attention. Asia herself testified under oath, affirming that she had indeed spoken with Adnan in the library on January 13, 1999, the very day Hai Min disappeared. On June 13, 2016, the judge granted Adnan a new trial, ruling that his original defense team had failed to properly challenge the cell phone location evidence. Later that year, his lawyers requested his release on bail while waiting for the retrial, but the motion was denied on December 29th. 2 years later, Maryland's Court of Special Appeals reviewed the case again, but in 2019, the Court of Appeals reversed the decision, blocking the new trial. For Hai Min's family, it was confirmation that justice had been served, and they felt it was finally time to move forward. Then, in 2021, the legal landscape changed. A new state law allowed individuals convicted of crimes committed as minors, who had already served more than 20 years in prison, to petition the court for relief. In 2022, a Baltimore court reopened the case once more, citing serious concerns about the effectiveness of Adnan's original defense. As a result, he was released from custody while the legal process continued. By September 2023, Adnan held a press conference. Standing before reporters, he once again declared his innocence, but this time he went further. Through a detailed visual presentation with slides, he accused the prosecution of misconduct, arguing they had failed to disclose information about possible alternative suspects. He also spoke about the toll the case had taken on his family over the decades. Finally, in March 2025, a Baltimore judge issued a dramatic ruling. The court upheld Adnan's conviction but modified the sentence, acknowledging that he had already served more than enough time behind bars. Adnan was granted parole for 5 years. Though technically still guilty in the eyes of the law, he would not return to prison. Both the prosecution and the defense agreed he no longer posed a danger to society. Now, more than 2 decades later, the case of Hai Min Lee and Adnan Syed remains one of the most debated in true crime history. Was justice truly served, or did errors and omissions alter the course of the trial? Did Adnan commit the crime, or was he the victim of a flawed system? The questions remain, and the final word may never come. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.